Okay. Absolutely exceptional film. Thank both of you for speaking with me.
Thank you.
What I want to know from you first is the main attraction because of what is about rebel country, because you think of rebel as country itself, but this is like rebel. So what about it that really struck you about the different changes that we're seeing today within the country genre?
I think that country music needs to represent the whole country, not just a certain small demographic. I think coming from the outside, I'm a Brit, coming from the outside and seeing a situation where the sort of subjects I raise in my film here are seen to be rebellious, that Breland here is seen as a rebel because of his colour, seems to me a ludicrous situation. You know, it's quite extraordinary. It wouldn't happen in any other genre. So the fact that it's still there in country music seems to me something that needs to change, and I hope this film reflects that.
And so for you, Breland, we see the evolution of country music, but for you as an artist, what do you think must remain the same that makes it at its heart country?
Yeah, to me the thing that makes country is the lyric more than anything else. You know, there are certain instrumentation choices that you can make production wise, but to me if a song tells a story, there's an argument to be made that it could be a country song. And I have a lot of data points as to songs that don't necessarily sound quote unquote country from very traditional country artists, and historically we have allowed all of those things to live in this space. I think back on someone like a Glenn Campbell who was blending very intentionally all of these really pop and Motown sounds in the 60s and 70s and 80s, or a Ronnie Milsap. I had a chance to perform at this Ronnie Milsap, it's his final concert in Nashville, and it was really kind of a tribute concert. A lot of artists came out and performed, and I sang a song called Any Day Now, which is a country song, but it is fresh out of the Motown playbook, and Ronnie would tell you that himself. And I think, looking at someone like a Dolly Parton and why she was so successful is because she really appealed to a broader audience, and her music was really sonically progressive at the time. I've had conversations with Garth Brooks, and he told me that when he first came out, a lot of people didn't consider his music to be country simply because of how popular it was. And now we look at all of those artists as really tentpoles of this genre. And so when I think about what it is that I'm doing, sonically, my stuff isn't really any more progressive than any of those artists that I named, but because of the color of my skin, people are looking at it as something different than really what it is, which is it's music that tells a story and blends together a lot of American genres, which to me is what country music has always been. But because of a lot of these other politics and perspectives that some people have, it becomes a different type of conversation. But I think at its core, what it is that I'm doing and what it is that I think a lot of these artists in this rebel country film are doing, it's always been artists like us that have been in this space. We just haven't always had the platform. And so I'm grateful to be a part of a film like this that gives us the platform to be able to tell our stories in the way that a lot of other artists have always had the freedom to do.
Right. You do a lot of connection with both slavery, the beginning of country music, to where we are today. What were the important key moments that had to remain within that film, despite all the changes that I'm sure comes with making a documentary?
I think there's one statistic in my film that sings louder than any other, and that is by the critic Marcus Dowling, very brilliant critic, who says that between 1920 and 2020, there are just five African American artists that have made it in country music. That makes you think.
Right.
And I think that statistic alone says almost everything you need to know about how many marginalized groups in America have been kept out of the party, and that needs to change.
Right. I want to talk about your experience so far. How has
Yeah.
it been? Would you say easier, or are you still facing the same struggles that once was in the beginning?
Yeah, I mean, I've definitely faced some struggles, but things have been decidedly easier for me than they are for, a lot of black women in this space still. I definitely still benefit from male privilege. When I think about artists like Mickey Guyton, who I just saw this weekend at CMA Fest, and we hadn't seen each other in a few months. I've been on the road. She lives in LA now, and she literally felt like she had to move out of Nashville because she's experienced a lot of trauma in town, and at the hands of kind of the country music establishment. And so now she lives in Los Angeles to protect her peace. And we had a whole long conversation about that. And I can only imagine how difficult it was for her 11 or 12 years ago when she first came to town and signed her deal. And she was really one of the only ones fighting that fight for a long time. And obviously that has changed more recently. But, when I think about my experience and someone like her, or someone like Frankie Staten, who came out in the 80s and was in Nashville and performing country music shows, and I believe she may have even played at the Grand Ole Opry, but she was met with so much resistance in the 80s, and partly as a woman, but also as a woman of color, as a black woman. The more things you have a part of your identity outside of just being a heterosexual white male, it makes it that much harder for you in this space. So while it has been a challenge for me, and I have experienced some things that haven't really sat well with me, I am also reminded that it's infinitely harder for artists like Mickey, and artists like Brittany Spencer and Raina Roberts and some of my peers on that side. So I guess to answer your question, yes, I have experienced some things. I have experienced people that have messaged me nasty things on the internet. I've had people tell me to go hang myself. I've had people at shows that are wearing Confederate flags and paraphernalia like that, and it can be uncomfortable, but I am equipped to be in this space, and thus far I've physically been safe. And I think if someone is going to message me from a private account on the internet, they can't even really stand behind what they're saying anyway. You got to message me from your real account for me to give it any type of
Quite
attention.
right,
So
right.
I'm good for the most part, but I'm really excited to watch country music evolve in a way that I think over the last few years there are way more artists that look like me in this space than there were in 2019. So it's cool to see artists like Shabuzi and Tanner Adele and Beyonce having some chart success in ways that we haven't really seen over the last several decades. And so I do think that the tides are starting to turn, and that this film is coming out at a really great time.
Wonderful. Thank you both so much for speaking to me.
Not at all.
Exceptional film once
Thank
again.
you very much.
Thank you.
You gotta hit that D&D, girl.